a good vach, a lichtige freiliche Chanukah, a good Chodesh. I'm not sure if the order is correct. I want to share a true story with you that took place not so many years ago, maybe 10 years ago. This is based on Rabbi and Mrs. Usher Fetterman, the shluchim of the Rebbe, to St. Thomas from the Virgin Islands. Since they're the couple, and there's lots going on during tourist season, they would always bring down Bachrim from Montreal or from New York to help them around the month of Tishrei, when Sukkot is celebrated, and now in the month of Kislev, when Chanukah is celebrated. Basically, they would have boys join them, greeting and meeting tourists and offering them an opportunity to do whatever mitzvah was current at the time. Hundreds of menorahs would be given out during the 8 days of Chanukah, mainly to people coming on cruise ships to St. Thomas. One of these boys that came down for Sukkot, his name was Zalmi Cohen, and he spent the month of Tishrei in St. Thomas helping the shluchim, and then he returned to Montreal, and he happened to be in the hospital visiting his grandfather, who was Rabbi Greenglass, who was in the hospital, and while he was there, he meets a Jewish guy named Jeff, and Jeff says, "Hey, what's a guy like you in Montreal doing with a tan in September, October?" And he said, "Well, I just came back from the Virgin Islands. I spent a few weeks over there helping Chabad." And Jeff, the big smile, says, "Let me tell you about Chabad in St. Thomas." He said, "A year ago in December, my family, my wife, our children went on a cruise, and we were walking in the streets of St. Thomas when a young man approached us and mentioned, 'Are you Jewish? It's Chanukah. Would you like a menorah?' And we knew it was Chanukah, but we had forgotten to pack a menorah with us, and we were very grateful to accept the menorah. I offered to pay for it, but the young man said, 'No pay needed, just make sure to light it.' Well, back on board on the cruise ship, we were sitting down to supper in the big dining hall when my daughter said, 'Dad, where's the menorah?' And I said, 'Well, it's back in the room, we'll light it later.' And she said, 'No, we have to light it here at the table with all our friends and family.' And so she and her brother ran off to the room to bring the menorah. They put it on the table, and very proudly and not quietly, we lit the menorah, sang the blessing, sang the Ma'os Tzur, and a very strange but inspiring thing happened. Within minutes, menorahs began to pop up on many, many tables in the dining room. Within a half an hour, there were 70 menorahs burning on 70 different tables, singing Chanukah songs. It was a most unbelievable and inspiring moment on a beautiful night in the Caribbean. All these people celebrating Chanukah together. So that's my St. Thomas story. Zalmi Cohen couldn't contain himself. He picked up the phone and he called Rabbi Fetterman in St. Thomas to say, "Do you know what's happened? I'm here in the hospital room in Montreal, and I met this guy Jeff, and he has told me how the menorahs that you guys give out," I was there for Sukkot, "but the different things you do really, really impact people." And Rabbi Fetterman, who goes to considerable effort and expense to bring down the Bachrim and hand out these free menorahs, it was very inspiring for him to know how this family had lit their menorah and how 70 other families had joined them to light that night. And who knows how many more hundreds of people actually were using the menorah. So it's very inspiring, but I think we can relate to this story. Okay, light, mitzvahs, it's great. 5 years go by, and Rabbi Fetterman receives another phone call. And this time it's from a Rabbi Simmons in Canada, who says, Rabbi, you must listen to this story. I've been learning with a boy named Beryl for around 6 months. And today, Shabbos, he made a kiddush in his house for some of his closest friends. And he really invited me and insisted that I come. So at the kiddush, he explained what's going on. He is now going to take a year off and travel to Yerushalayim to study in Mayonot. And he said, "Do you know what inspired me to make this decision to go study full-time in the yeshiva for a year? 5 or 6 years ago, my family was on a cruise in the Caribbean, and we stopped in St. Thomas, and a young man gave us a menorah, and we lit it in the dining room, and 70 other families lit the menorah. Our family was inspired, and when we came back to Montreal, we decided to get a little more involved Jewishly. And we went to the Montreal Jewish Center, And recently I began to study every day, once a week with a rabbi, and I decided it's time to make that move. Rabbi Simmons realized that he was the guy, he was one of those boys visiting St. Thomas 6 years ago, handing out those menorahs to these people. So there's a very good chance he was the one who handed the menorah to this family that not only inspired them at the time, but inspired them to make a move closer to Torah, to Hashem, resulting with this little young boy, this college guy, heading to Yerushalayim to study for a year. And the story's not over yet, but this young man, Beryl, returned to Canada, married, and he's raising a beautiful family, and he's involved with university students as well. So never, never, never underestimate the power of a single mitzvah, a single act of kindness and light. We can make a world of difference. May we start doing that. Have a great Chanukah.